Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this CEU. I am Sue Harper, VP of Business Development for Healthcare and Education. And the CEU today is on flexibility in healthcare. If there are any questions, please post in the chat and I will cover them off at the end of the presentation. I would like to introduce Chelsea Leonard, who's going to be doing the presentation today. And she's the Canadian Steelcase Regional Manager for Healthcare, located in beautiful British Columbia. And she will be presenting the content for you. I enjoy your lunch today, and thank you for being a part of today's CEU. Over to you, Chelsea.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for the intro. So as Sue mentioned, we're here to talk today about flexibility in healthcare and what that means for us as design teams and project teams looking to implement and achieve flexibility on our projects. So first off, why the topic of flexibility? The current reality of our healthcare system is that it requires a flexible structure and one that can adapt to what we see today, as well as what we see going forward, sort of the unknowns in the healthcare industry going forward. The pace of change with new technologies, as well as demographic shifts, as well regulatory changes, it's really caused us to require the built environment to adapt and respond to these ever-changing needs. So healthcare leaders, clinicians, facility departments, even architects and designers, they all agree that the premise that healthcare spaces need to adapt. But the question really is, how do these facilities adapt? And that is really up for debate right now. And that's why we're seeing the market demanding a closer look at facility design intent and ways to create more and better allowances for flexibility while still meeting key goals of the Quadruple Aim, the biggest one being reducing cost within our healthcare system. So the good news for us is that flexibility is really more than just a tool to achieve cost savings. It can also positively impact other Quadruple Aim goals, including increased patient satisfaction, enhancing clinician experience, as well as supporting family in the space as well. So with so much opportunity around flexibility, we kind of ask the question, why are there so many examples out there where we have projects that flexibility didn't work successfully, that they ended up costing too much, or they didn't flex in the ways that were intended? So this is really sort of what we're going to dig deeper into today. So this is a registered CEU, so we have pre-registered for anybody who's looking to achieve IDCEC credits. So if you have an IDCEC number, if you can throw that into the chat with your name as it was sort of written as you registered. If you don't have your number handy, just throw your name into the chat and say, IDCEC, no number, but your name as it would be on your registration, and I can look that up for you. And then anybody who is looking for certification with OAA, just let me know in the chat as well, your name and email address, and we'll send off a certificate of completion so that you can self-report to OAA. And that way you guys can all get credit for today's session. In terms of other kind of housekeeping items before we really start to dig in, please feel free to ask questions throughout the session. Sue is going to moderate the chat for us, and we'll have opportunities throughout the presentation to ask questions and dig deeper into any content. So yeah, with that, let's dig into our latest research. So as you know, with Steelcase, we like to research things. So around the topic of flexibility, we dug in and wanted to know more about what's happening in the industry today. So in collaboration with Cadre, which is the Center for Advanced Design and Research Evaluation, which is an arm of HKS Architects, Steelcase conducted an extensive review of flexibility literature, as well as nationwide surveys of healthcare leaders, clinicians, and facility managers to get a sense of what was out there in the market so far. So we asked the questions: could a better understanding of flexibility improve the likelihood of project success? Or could it allow healthcare organizations to plan for and realize cost savings, as well as potential revenue enhancements, depending on the market, while meeting the evolving changes of healthcare today, as well as tomorrow? Because at the end of the day, we build our healthcare facilities to last for 50 or more years. And if you look back 50 years ago to see how much healthcare has changed, it's kind of mind-boggling. Even if you look back 5 to 10 years ago to see how healthcare has changed, it's quite dramatic. So first of all, let's take a look at the research process that we used. As a first step, we started by searching the existing literature, both healthcare and non-healthcare, to get a sense of how people describe and use flexibility. After the synthesis, we developed the FLEX framework, which we're going to discuss in detail today. The third step, we looked for examples both in the healthcare industry and outside that demonstrated the FLEX model. And then we tested this model with key stakeholders to see whether or not it held true. So our research methodology consisted of the literature review, framework development, and testing. So we started with the literature review, looking at both peer-reviewed and gray literature to identify any emergent frameworks that already existed. The intent here wasn't to create something new, but to see if we could flush out some previously tested models. So the team synthesized the literature into key concepts and perspectives. And as you can see, there's a number of different studies highlighted here. We're not going to go into each one specifically, but we started to see that there were different ways to describe flexibility in flexible spaces. So whether that was user-defined change, dimensions of time relative to a building's lifespan, or how quickly something can be changed or made. So the one that really started to come out for us, though, was Monahan's attributes, which we're going to define more in detail in the next few slides. So now that we know more about sort of the views around flexibility, we'll dive into the definitions. Through our literature review, supported by survey feedback, like I said, we were able to bring forward Monahan's framework, which defined flexibility using 4 key attributes, those being versatility, modifiability, convertibility, and scalability. So versatility and modifiability allow the users to shift states without changing the space itself. And convertibility and scalability work on another dimension, which alters the use of a space into something new or different. So we're going to dig deep into each of those 4 attributes. The first one is versatility. So versatility allows for multiple spaces, or multiple space uses rather, so that the user can do different things within that space without having to make any changes. A versatile space gives the people in that space agency or control over how they choose to use a particular space or object. So if we use the example of a table, a table could be a dining room table that we use to eat at, play games with family members, host people, or in times of COVID, work from home. But the table itself doesn't change, but the range of activities that you're able to do at that table can vary greatly. So versatile design strategies support multiple functions and thereby maximize the use of these items and increase cost savings overall. So if we look at what that looks like in space, here we have a large transition area, which really kind of shines in its versatility, and it gives people the opportunity to choose how they want to spend their time while they're waiting, or spending time in transition within a healthcare facility. So there's numerous different activities that are supported within this environment, whether it's finding a place to work, stay connected to email, have a quick bite to eat, socialize with friends and family, or have a place to sort of step away from the activity, have a private conversation, or to just be alone with yourself or with others. So designing these spaces to be versatile allows the visitors within them to choose the setting that supports their desired waiting activity. So there's different privacy zones that afford different levels of acoustic privacy, as well as a space for people to make phone calls or simply enjoy that moment of solitude. In social zones, we see seating arrangements with privacy shielding, which encourages sort of a more natural, relaxed interaction within small groups. And obviously here in the work zone, we have the opportunity for people to grab a bite to eat or stay connected to work. There's easy access to power, so people can use their laptop while they're in these spaces. And then ultimately, these spaces also provide the opportunity for the healthcare system to maybe use it for private events or education sessions, staff training. So, furniture can be easily moved, and this space can be repurposed for another function. The second attribute that we looked at within Monahan's framework was this idea of modifiability. And this is the attribute that welcomes a user to actively change a space or object without needing any support from facilities or contractors. So this enhances the user experience and still allows for us to meet changing needs of an environment. So modifiable elements don't require any permanent structure change and are generally among the most popular methods for providing ad hoc flexibility within spaces. In healthcare, we see modifiable furniture as height adjustable desks, computer workstations on sort of a movable cart, as well as movable stools, items on casters to help move around. So organizations can save money overall with furniture that supports multiple functions, and things that can also be updated without decommissioning. So what does this look like in space? If we look at the example here of a patient room, there's several different elements in here that would be considered modifiable. Whether it's a family lounge, which converts into a sleeper, can support work modes, relaxation modes, or a patient recliner that allows the patient to change their position, whether they want to eat in the recliner, relax, sit back. It gives them a lot of agency to find a way that's comfortable and support the activities that they're really willing to do. And then even for clinician work, we see a wall-mounted workstation here, which gives the clinician the opportunity to sit at the bedside or stand up, depending on their needs or the position that they want to be in to have a conversation with the patient. So when we looked at the first two of versatility and modifiability, again, we were talking about those factors that can be changed by a user easily, or a user can adapt the way that they work with that. The next two we're going to talk about are really going to be that emphasis on more permanent, semi-permanent solutions that generally require either a facilities intervention or a contractor intervention to make those changes. So convertibility allows us to adapt the space and the objects within it for a new use by replacing the infill or a building from one function to another. This attribute really helps organizations meet the new or changing needs that they have by repurposing existing spaces, whether that's changing an exam room to a virtual care office. And as I said, unlike versatility or modifiability, these convertible spaces are going to require inputs from facilities. When designed strategically within the footprint of mechanical systems, convertibility can be used to save money over time and provide more flexibility going forward. So one of the things that we're looking at here is how we can look at providing spaces that can adapt to new uses while minimizing the cost of renovations. And so here we have through a universal exam room. By locating all of the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical services along one wall, it makes it a lot easier for this place to be repurposed going forward with minimal impact and disruption when those changes are made. So that same universal exam room can start off looking like an infusion room where we can swap out the case good configuration, add some technology into the walls. A few other changes around the type of modular casework and furniture, and that infusion room now becomes a break room. You'll notice that the electrical services and plumbing remains in the same place every time, but everything else around that changes. A few more changes in furniture and casework, and that break room now becomes a really high functioning workspace for teams to come in and meet and support their collaboration. So again, that footprint of the room remains unchanged. The lighting and the plumbing remains basically the same. It's just the cabinets that change and the furniture that changes. So we talk about convertibility from a floor plate or room standpoint. We can also look at convertibility from just the level of casework. So modular casework is really growing in popularity and really supports these cost-effective changes going forward. When I was doing design in my previous to sales life, millwork was one of those things where we would, do all of our millwork details, send it out for tender and construction, and by the time the project ended up being built, there'd be a different user group within some of these projects, and we'd have to end up redoing the millwork because they had different needs. So a very expensive change, and one that posed a lot of challenges for the client. Here we can see how just by simply moving and adjusting modular casework on modular wall systems, we're able to really quickly and easily add and remove cabinets, add storage cabinets, upper cabinets, etc. So the fourth attribute within Monahan's framework is this idea of scalability, or the idea that it can shrink or grow. Scalability allows for the building to expand rapidly or contract if needs dictate. The space is scaled for expansion or contraction, but these are going to definitely need to be facilities managed changes because they tend to be the most disruptive and investment heavy of all of the flexibility attributes. When planned for, though, scalability gives an opportunity to provide for some key competitive advantages and allows organizations to quickly and cost effectively respond to market changing conditions. So whether we have shelled space within a building, an entire floor that's left unfinished, but was meant to meet future needs, this can be a great opportunity for us to deploy scalable initiatives. So by using modular space planning units, we can quickly build out these spaces with demountable walls, grid-based utility systems, or even something as simple as taking the standard 10 by 10 office and making it a 10 by 12 office, because it gives you the ability to take that 10 by 12 office and turn it into 2 5 by 6 offices. We found that people are quite happy to work in a 5 by 6, but a 5 by 5 was too small. So thinking about the size of the modules that you're creating and how easily those can be subdivided for future flexibility going forward. So that's the sort of summary of the framework, but we also wanted to understand what the different stakeholders within this felt about flexibility and what their perceptions were. So we surveyed a wide variety of people, and the survey had several different dimensions to it. We looked at sort of prioritization and challenges of different flexibility features, use of common tenets such as modularity and standardization, as well as demographic information to understand preferences by, age, years in profession, their role within the facility. So were they a healthcare administrator, were they facilities manager, were they nurse managers, etc. So we used a third-party survey provider to help us conduct a nationwide panel of clinical and facility leader surveys focused at people in outpatient facilities to understand the perspective of key stakeholders, as well as to further develop the framework and identify strategies for implementing flexibility within projects. There was consensus among all stakeholders that healthcare facilities need to become more flexible, whether it's operationally or functionally, in order to meet the industry standards for adaptation and change. But there were differences in sort of how people viewed flexibility. So not surprisingly, we saw that administrators were much more organizationally focused and focused on responding to market needs. Interestingly, the survey indicated that these nurse stakeholders focused as much on elements as flexibility related to time as they did to flexibility related to space. And that was kind of a key learning, is that flexibility is not just spatial, it's also operational. And then facility managers were the most spatially focused in their responses, which wasn't particularly surprising. So to assess Monahan's revised framework, the survey participants were asked to rate the importance of the 4 attributes on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 as the most important. So here we saw, the importance of versatility being the most significant factor, much more than, say, scalability. Survey respondents were also asked to indicate to what extent their facilities incorporated flexibility attributes. So we found that versatility and convertibility were the most commonly incorporated attributes within their facilities. And then we also looked at what drives flexibility with different stakeholders. So while the differences between the groups it's early here in BC, was not statistically significant, it's interesting to see that the changes in technology and equipment was a critically important element, specifically for facility managers. And this speaks to the rapid change of technology compared to the slower rate of change of the facilities themselves. And the need for us to sync the 2 resources for better care delivery going forward. Participants also provided insight about flexibility as it related to cost. So almost 3/4 of our respondents felt that flexibility should not cost any more, and that it was basically something that they expected to be baked in. So we felt that the key here was to incorporate flexibility as an operational strategy from the outset of the project. However, we did find that people were willing to invest more in order to yield flexible spaces in the future, looking at scalability. And for scalability, people were willing to invest up to 20% more in capital cost if they could produce a greater return on investment for their project. So again, versatility, modifiability, that's expected to be baked in, but that idea that you could scale up rapidly, they were willing to invest for that level of change. So other things we looked at, when is flexibility expected to be applied during the life of the building? For most respondents, we found that the benefits are most gained in the early and midlife of a building and less so towards the end of a building's life. The full Flex report is available, and if this is a topic that you guys are interested in, I encourage you to visit Cadre's website, and that's at cadreresearch.org, and maybe you can get Sue or Maurice to type that into the chat for you. But even if you went through and typed in, the Flex report with 2X, it'll take you to Cadre's website, and it's a great 80-page report that talks in detail about all of these different elements. And so some of the other qualitative questions that they look into, how is ROI for flexibility investments recognized and over what period of time? Is it possible to overinvest in flexibility? And what can a lack of flexibility do to hinder design projects? And then the other question we looked at here was, do standards help flexibility or do they hinder that? So those questions are all really examined in detail in the Flex report. And like I said, it's free and available on Cadre's website, which is cadreresearch.org. So how can we apply the flexibility framework and insights around flexibility to your everyday work? So what can you take away from the new research? How can a better flexibility framework help organizations like yours meet Quadruple Aim goals while, particularly focusing on reducing costs? The first thing is to remember that terminology is critical when discussing flexibility. So remember the 4 attributes that we talked about, the attributes of versatility, modifiability, convertibility, and scalability. It's clear that these terms have different operational meanings and furthermore have different meanings to different stakeholder groups, but it's critical to have multidisciplinary teams discuss these using sort of a common language so that you're able to ensure that you're talking about the same thing. The next idea is to build for agility. So flexibility, especially modifiability and scalability, allows for organizations to respond efficiently to emergent needs and delivery modes. And I think if the past 12 months have taught us anything, it's that we need to be able to respond rapidly, especially in healthcare, to changes that come out of the blue. So how can we adapt our healthcare facilities to respond to whether pandemics, natural disasters, if it's a new way of working, a new mode of care delivery? There's so many things that fall into the unknown. So having solutions that provide for that rapid flexibility or rapid change is really important. And as we mentioned, we found that our survey respondents indicated that they would be willing to invest more for flexible spaces when they talked about or when they looked at the idea of scalability. So could you rapidly deploy remote clinics? People will be willing to spend more if they could do that rapid expansion or contraction when they're no longer needed. And then the idea that we need to flex beyond space. So stakeholders, in addition to having a lens for flexibility spatially, they also have a lens for it operationally. So looking at things such as time, roles, and resources within an organization are also helpful. And then beyond just the cost savings, it's important to remember that flexibility can support other Quadruple Aim goals, such as enhancing the patient and family experience, improving clinician and staff experience, as well as achieving better population health outcomes. So when we look at, enhanced patient experience, this is really about those versatile and modifiable elements that allow people to have agency when they're choosing how to use a waiting space, how to spend their time in an inpatient or exam room, looking at improving overall comfort, accommodating the needs of not only the patient, but also the family member who may be there to support, promoting communication between the clinicians, and helping patients feel welcomed and supported. When we dig into kind of improving clinician and staff experience, versatile and modifiable spaces allow for clinician engagement by supporting their needs for collaboration as well as their needs for respite before they hit a state of burnout. And that can have positive financial results for organizations by reducing turnover and minimizing any recruitment costs that they may have. And then spaces that are versatile and modifiable can support individual well-being and encourage healthy choices, which really support the idea of achieving better population health. So if we look at, a transition space during the day that can turn into a community education center in the evenings, we can actually start to use these spaces beyond the kind of core initial group of patients they were originally designed to support. So that's sort of the end of the formal content. Sue, how are we doing for questions in the chat? We'd love to do a Q&A session here.
Yeah, we haven't got any questions in the chat yet. Just a lot of updates on their CEU numbers and that we'll be able to connect with you after so that you can send out the pertinent information.
Perfect.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say before we get into this segment is regarding what you're going to talk about now. I'd like the people on the phone to keep in mind that even though this is a relatively new product for Steelcase, we've had quite a large install of this product at the new Corallucci Vaughan Hospital. And we are also going to be placing this product in the new Michael Garron Hospital as well. So just keep that in mind as we go through this next part of the presentation.
Absolutely. So if there's any questions that come up or that you had about the flexibility content, please feel free to keep throwing them in the chat, and Sue's going to moderate that. We will also kind of go back and look at that afterwards as well. So now that the CEU portion is formally concluded, we'll talk a little bit about the product that Sue mentioned, which is Convey, our new modular case good line within Steelcase Health. So Convey was launched to help support this idea of flexibility and the need to create spaces that are able to adapt to changes in delivery modes, in changes in technology, new regulatory changes, as well as provide the future flexibility to adapt to the unknown or what we see going forward. So when we did that research with HKS, we found that there were over 400 different definitions of flexibility, which can definitely lead to a lot of confusion around that. So that's where that framework really comes in as being important. So when we're talking about flexible casework here, we're really looking at the concept of convertibility. So the idea that you can, with some facility changes, start to modify the space. So all the images here show a 10 by 10 space with 4 different applications, whether it's an exam room, a consult room, break space, or staff lounge. And we've been able to reuse Convey to some degree in all of these applications, but they're all within the same footprint. So you'll notice that the plumbing location is consistent. We've used via demountable walls and hung the case goods directly off that, so that it gives us the ability to scale up or scale down should the need arise. So when we talk about flexibility in terms of modular casework, the idea that you can reconfigure quickly is very important, as well as making sure that there's minimal operational downtime. When we're looking at P3 projects in particular, there can be financial penalties that can be quite extreme for every day a room is taken out of service. So anything we can do to reduce the financial cost to the operational team it's a huge benefit. We can also look at other benefits, including minimal creation of construction dust, which when we're looking at modifications in operational facilities, because frankly, hospitals are always operational, that's a huge benefit as well. The ability to look at reusing replaceable components, or even the manufactured consistency that we see within a product like Convey. And then the biggest one that the biggest difference you'll see between modular casework and standard millwork is the warranty. Millwork typically runs about a 1, maybe a 2-year warranty. When you're looking at modular casework like Convey, we're looking at a lifetime limited warranty. So that product is going to be warranted as long as it's in the building, and that's inclusive of labor. So, you know, if there are issues that you face, it's a lot easier to deal with that if you know, a piece of cabinetry becomes damaged. Instead of trying to figure out, okay, well, what laminate did they use? What mill worker did they use? How do we get somebody to come in and measure the door? It's a simple call, the RGO, or POI rather, to say, you know, hey, the cabinet in room 302 is damaged. We need a replacement part. And, you know, all of a sudden a service call can be arranged, and that can easily be arranged. So we've got a little video here that we want to show you, just to show you how the Convey system works, and some of the cool little details. So hopefully the technology gods will be nice to me and this will work beautifully for us all. So let's go. Hopefully everybody got to hear our funky dance music there. So that's sort of a quick overview of what the Convey system looks like. As you can see, you know, it's can be infinitely reconfigured, repurposed. We have a very unique bracket system, and that's one of my kind of favorite parts of that video, is it shows how that bracket system works, and that it gives you the ability to achieve a really tight fit and finish on every single cabinet without having to use shims behind the product. So we've got that flexibility just by using that 4-way dimensional bracket. The connection also allows us to distribute the weight across the entire width of the product. So we're able to hold up to 1,000 pounds per cabinet, even when they're wall suspended. So that's a really high weight load. So we'll start to go into some, oops, nope, not that. So in terms of the adaptability here, you can see that bracket here. So it's provides really easy adjustability, simply using screwdriver, and then we're able to cap that off for infection control. So it allows walls to vary up to 1/2 inch over a 10-foot run, as all these components are installed on that continuous rail. And then that bracket allows for those micro adjustments to make sure that you have that really tight fit and finish that we expect in healthcare environments. And as you'll see kind of a little bit further into the presentation, that bracket really is what helps us with sort of moves, adds, or changes going forward while minimizing disruption. So we have In standard casework, you typically have a French cleat system where a rail to bracket connection supports, or sorry, the French cleat system supports the cabinet. So it requires the user to lift the product up and over the cleat in order to remove it. In order to make any changes, they need to remove any items above the work surface, such as any mounting boards or accessories that could impede the removal of the top. If we're going to start changing cabinets here, we have to interact with a plumber to disconnect any plumbing fixtures, and potentially an electrician, especially if we're looking at, sensor-based faucets. We then have to cut and seal to remove any components or obstructions in order to remove the work surface. And then we have to lift the case off the wall and then do the whole process in reverse to put it back together. So that's typically what we would see with standard millwork or some of the other modular products out there. When you look at what that process looks like in terms of Convey, you're going to see a significant time savings. With the Convey system, we have that continuous rail and bracket connection. It allows for much faster disconnection. So the first step is just to disconnect the work surface from the base cabinet. You don't need to remove the work surface, you just need to loosen the screws. And then you're able to loosen the bracket enough so that there's enough room to flick the hook up and over the rail. And that gives you enough clearance to actually pull that center cabinet. So if you wanted to swap out that sort of module of 3 drawers there's no need to disconnect the plumbing because there's enough play in that bracket that we're able to just pick up that little small piece, pull it out, and add a new piece in. So when you think about what it takes to coordinate trades, especially in a healthcare facility, we don't need to call in plumbing. We don't need to disconnect any of the accessories. We don't need to worry about marring drywall, creating dust, and having painters or drywallers come in. So we're minimizing the number of trades, which minimizes the cost and also significantly minimizes the amount of time that these changes are going to take. So instead of having something that goes from, an hour or starts a couple of days, it can go to, a matter of a couple of hours to do these changes. When we look at sort of the ability of this product as well to adjust, there's a lot of flexibility in how the product can be adjusted, obviously on the wall as we talked about, but also on the floor, because I've never yet seen a building that was perfectly flush with walls and floors. I think that's kind of a given that things kind of wiggle. So being able to make sure that you have a nice clean plumb install is really important. One of the other things though that's kind of unique to the Convey system is the way that we actually mount off the floor. So in cases where you have, say, a floor extended system, we create actually a separate piece. So instead of having glides embedded into the actual case itself, there's no way for moisture within our system to wick its way back into the case goods. And so this means that, in the event that there is a spill, because, spills and leaks do happen, you're not going to risk damaging the product. And especially in environments where we're hyper concerned about infection control, this is a huge, huge advantage. The sort of kick cover that we include, it's, wrapped in HPL with a 3mm edge band. So, it's water impervious. We're not going to allow anything to kind of wick its way into the cabinetry. So if you think about, if you have a paper towel and you just put the corner in a little bit of water, it just slowly starts to work its way into the rest of the paper towel. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen in the cabinetry. So we've actually intentionally created those separations so that you're not going to see moisture migrate throughout the cabinetry. A lot of times we're also dealing with healthcare systems that have legacy specifications that are really built around the idea of millwork. And so they're going to reference AWI standards or OMAC standards, and that are going to have certain requirements around how the case goods themselves are built. Convey is actually built to meet all of these AWI standards. So we use wet glue and dowel clamp, case clamp construction. We're standard HPL on all surfaces with a 3mm edge band on those high touch surfaces. And so this means that, we're not using cam locks to secure the products together. So cam locks are commonly what you'll see in like an IKEA installation where you have to put the screw in and twist it. This is built much more like standard millwork. So you're getting that product quality that you expect, but you're also getting that lifetime warranty that you expect out of a modular product. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds there. So it's really hard to do kind of an apples to apples comparison with millwork, but yeah, it's one of those products you really have to kind of see and feel. It feels very substantial. Yeah, I love this stuff. I actually am considering, if they come out with veneer, I would put this in my kitchen. I have two 10-year-old boys, and I think they could certainly put this product through its through its paces. I can see Sue laughing. She also has a son who's much older than mine. But in terms of sort of flexibility, one of these sort of hesitancies that we see around kind of going towards a modular solution is that, it's not going to be flexible enough. I'm not going to have as many choices as a designer as I would if I did custom millwork. So our goal with this product is to take away some of that hesitancy by really showing that we can support so many different applications. So we have a wide array of sort of standard modules to start with, whether it's base cabinets, upper cabinets, full height wardrobes, and then all these units are parametrically flexible. So instead of standard industry casework dimensions where you see like an 18, a 21, a 24-inch cabinet, these are all flexible in 1-inch increments. And that's height, depth, and width. So if you've got a small exam room and you want to provide, some base cabinetry, but the standard, 24 inches too deep, throw in an 18 or a 15. We can definitely accommodate that. The only limitation you'll see is sometimes on drawer heights, we'll keep those static, and that's just to keep aesthetically, you don't want to have sort of your sight lines jumping all over the place. But we do have a lot of flexibility in what we can do, and we can also accommodate specials if need be. Because the product was designed for health, there's going to be certain things that you'll see in Convey that you may not see in other casework designed for different applications. The first one, soft close hinges, are standard on all product, and that's really to help avoid any pinch points as well as to reduce noise levels in healthcare facilities. So if you're installing this in a patient room and your family member wants to go get their coat out of the wardrobe, you don't want the door slamming shut every single time. People are very aware of acoustics in healthcare facilities, so we wanted to be able to support that. We're able to scale widths and heights to make products more accessible to a wide variety of users. And then we've also done things like ensuring that the interiors of all of our cabinets are going to be white. So even if you picked, a black maple for the outside, the interior of that cabinet is going to be white, and that's going to help with increased visibility for cleaning. It also provides a lot more flexibility with your ability to repurpose that cabinet in a different space at a later date. Because now you don't have to worry about having different wood grains match. You can swap out the doors, but the interior cases are going to actually work in any application. And then we're also able to incorporate sinks into the product as well. So we have a wide range of sinks to choose from, but they're all designed specifically for healthcare. So you're going to see offset drains, no overflow valves, things that tend to make infection control people start to twitch when they see. We want to avoid all that as much as possible. And then there's a number of top conditions we can meet as well. And this is one of the really cool things I like about this product. So whether your client is looking for, a vertical fascia application, slope top, or if they want a flat top application, we're able to do that. And we do that separate from the actual box of the product. So if you have, say, a run of 4 upper cabinets and you want a slope top application, typically what you would see is that you'd order like a box with a slope top. So you'd end up with 4 seams, I guess, or 3 seams between those 4 cabinets along the top. And that means that you could also only repurpose that cabinet in an environment where another slope top product was being used. The way that the convey system works is that the top condition is kind of installed afterwards. So you end up with this nice, smooth, seamless top. So housekeeping, EVS, and infection control will love you. But it also gives you the flexibility to move that product to, my presentation has a mind of its own, to move that product somewhere else where maybe you don't have that top condition, because you can install a different top condition later. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, both in the initial installation as well as kind of moving forward if you want to do those changes later on. And then we have a number of scribe to fit components, so that if you're doing a vertical fascia, we can go right to the ceiling, make everything look really, really tight and clean, because we don't want to see any gaps in the product. Fillers are probably the one thing people don't think about until they see them done poorly. And this is one area that Convey shines. So our fillers go all the way around. So it's not simply just a front piece, but when you put a filler in an end run of cabinetry, you'll find that it's exposed both it's closed both top and bottom. So it's not going to provide, a dust trap going forward. It's not a place where, debris can get stuck. So again, this is something that, EVS and infection control really appreciate, is that every opportunity for, this thing really has a mind of its own, every opportunity for dirt debris to get into the product has all been sealed, and that's just not a possibility. So we can do that for corners and end runs as well. And then there's some other features that we've added as well. So we have the ability to incorporate wireless locking, because everybody loses cabinetry locks. So, instead of having a bunch of keys, we'll have, we can do wireless locking. And this gives you flexibility to lock, one cabinet, all the cabinets in the room. You can also have the locking pad located on the exterior of an exam room. So a clinician could unlock the room as they come in. So from the inside of the patient room or exam room, everything is seamless, but the clinician's able to open that, or they can carry it around with them and unlock multiple rooms. So there's a ton of different ways that we can to set that up depending on the facility's needs. The other concern we sometimes get with going to a modular solution is, are we going to be limited to the finishes that we can choose? And this is something that we were very aware of when we designed the product. So in addition to all the standard Steelcase laminates that are available, we also have a curated selection of Wilsonite and Formica laminates as well, so that we can match other elements that are being used in the building. So there's over 100 different options to choose from. So it should give you lots of flexibility. We do have a special call out from our product manager who would love to see somebody do an install of this beautiful citrine green. So if that's you, let me know. And this just gives you an overview of what our solid surface sinks look like. So a ton of different shapes and applications to suit any environment that you need. And these are all done in our solid surface Corian product. In terms of applications, the product can really be used anywhere. So whether it's exam spaces where we have limited footprints, or you need to install accessories such as glove boxes, that can all be incorporated into Convey. I'm just going to blast through these in the in essence of time here. So a bunch of different applications that you can see in different configurations. Patient rooms are another great option. So we can create, personal storage for family members, create clinical zones. There's a number of different configurations and applications that we can create in these environments to make sure that that patient room has a very functional, high-performing, but homey feel to it. And we can also integrate into products like VIA, so we can, create wall-mounted workstations to provide some flexibility as well. So whether that's, a collaborative break room, meeting room for staff, there's a lot of options in how to incorporate that. And then ultimately break rooms. So think beyond healthcare. Are there projects that you're working on that have a work cafe or a coffee room that are in need of casework? This is a great way to do that if you've got quick turnaround times, coffee rooms, anywhere where you need standard millwork. Convey is a great solution for you. So we can see that all used here. And then even, a nice little hosting station in a boardroom. There's a lot of flexibility. So I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it back to Sue now, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. That was very informative. I learned something every time you present that, so I really appreciate it. I posted in the chat that if there's any questions that you have after the fact, please email me at sharper or sharper, which doesn't really reflect anything about me, sharper@poi.ca. And there'll also be a recording of this session available because I know that some people have requested that. And so for all the attendees, we will also be sending out a recording of today's session. I really appreciate you guys taking this lunch hour with us. It was a delight to host you. So thank you from POI and Steelcase.